Alright, the last animation is going to be a little bit more sophisticated, but not by much. The actual animations themselves are going to be fairly simple. It's just that we're going to have three layers for the logo mark. So let's go ahead and copy our artwork, go into Animate, do File New. Remember it's the same dimensions from last time. Hit Create, do Command V for paste. We'll apply all the good stuff, hit OK. Alright, so now this is made up of multiple shapes. So if I click on here, you can see I can get that out of the way. If I click on this one, it selects everything. Let me put it back to where it was. So what I want to do is I want to make this raw artwork. So just to protect myself from the text getting messed up, I'm going to go ahead and distribute that to its own layer, Command-Shift-D, and I'm going to lock it so I don't accidentally select it, and I'll come back to it later when I need it. So I'm going to select the mark now, and I need to make this into a shape. Right now it's part of a group, and then this piece out here on the outside, that's also part of a group. So I want to ungroup them and get them just shapes. So I'll click and drag around my artwork. I'm not selecting the text because that layer is locked. And I'm going to go to the Modify drop-down menu and slide down to Break Apart. And that's the equivalent of doing an expand in Adobe Illustrator. So the first one I do will break apart this box around it. If I do another one, Command B, then that breaks up the smaller groups. So these are groups within groups. And if I keep on doing it, eventually everything has that little dot pattern on top of it. That's what I want. Okay, so now I can click just on the center part, and I'm going to distribute that to its own layer, Command-Shift-D. I'll rename this Logo 1. This will be the first phase. I'm going to click on the outline now, Command-Shift-D, distribute that, call that Logo 2, and this layer in here, I just need to rename that, call that Logo 3. So now I've got everything. Now I've been having a problem with this. For some reason it's been crashing a lot lately. Not sure why that is. So I'm going to take my text and I'm going to break that apart as well. That way I don't have to worry about the text having an error in it. So I'm going to do a Command B, break apart. Now the nice thing about this is when you do a break apart on text, the first break apart separates the individual letters in their own individual text boxes. That's a nice feature. I like that a lot. So these are all separate text boxes. It's still not an outline yet. Second Command B, that's what makes it into an outline. And I want these to be animated together. So they're all in the right layers. This is in its own layer. These separate guys are on their own layers as well. So I'm going to save this, and I'll go ahead and call this is the last one. So it's the level blur, and make sure I'm in the right folder. I'm in the animated folder 3, so I'll save that there. Okay, so nothing changes. In fact, it's probably going to run smoother when this is made into artwork. Okay, so I'm going to click on everything's unlocked. I'm going to click and drag all the way down. I'm going to go to the Insert drop-down menu, slide down to Create Classic Tween, and my animation wants to be generating these graphics, so that's fine. And now if I go over here, let me open this a little further and take a look at the various symbols that we're working. So number 4 is the text. Number 3 is the center dot. This is the outline, and this is the little bits. So those are the 4 tween symbols that it created. So these are the same type of symbols that we saw in Adobe Illustrator earlier. And 0 and 1. Okay, so my mouse is really sensitive. I just have to wave my hand over it. It starts to roll around. Okay, so animation's ready to go. Everything's going to be fading in. So now I'm going to come over here to the very last keyframe. I'm going to do I'm going to click away. I got to click and drag straight down, and I'm going to do an F6 there. Okay, so all my bits are going to start off on the first frame, and they're all going to be transparent in the alpha. So while I've got my graphic symbols, I've got all my graphic symbols together selected, and I'm going to go to the alpha and set it to 0. So if I scrub this forward, we'll see them all coming at the same time. Okay, so the first thing I want to show up is number 1. So that's good. The next thing I want to show up is number 2. So I'm just going to grab this and drag it over here to that 30 position there. The next thing I want is number 3 to show up. So I'm going to grab this and drag that a little further down the line. And then this guy over here, my text box, I need to grab the text box, this guy over here, clicking on the whole layer. I'm going to just drag this all the way to the end, and I'm going to get it so that it's even with that last frame. So if I rewind, so I'll send this back to the beginning. So we'll scrub it. Now you'll notice right in here, this fades in, but then it's going to disappear. And the reason it disappears is because it no longer exists. There's the dot, but the dot's not there. So then this one starts to fade in. And then as soon as that shows up, we'll call this the frame. There's the frame. And then as soon as it moves to the other one, the frame disappears. Then this shows up. And then as soon as it moves over, the text starts to show up. So it's being stepped because they're not visible here. So what I need to do now is go to the very end of the animation and just click and drag straight up. So I've got all my frames that are turning invisible on me. And I'm going to do an F5. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the last keyframe that was used and it's going to use that position over here. This is not a keyframe. This is an extension of the timeline. So I'm just doing an F5 and it drops everything in place. And that's pretty much it. Everything just runs now. So let's run this. And that's the setup. Now if I want to make this animation for the text a little bit shorter, I can grab this and make it so that way it'll render a little faster. Let's see what that looks like. So start that again. I'm just hitting return while I'm in Animate, and I get a sense of what it looks like. So that actually doesn't look bad. I can live with that. So what that means is I don't need all these extra frames over here because the animation ends right there. Nothing happens after that. So I'm going to, with one swoop, I'm going to click. I'm not going to let go. I'm going to click and drag without letting go. So click and drag without letting go. And I'm selecting everything up to that last frame that I want. And then what I want to do is I want to delete the frames. So the shortcut key to add frames is F5. You add frames with the function key F5. You add keyframes with an F6. The shortcut key to delete frames is Shift F5. So F5 adds frames. So for example, if I do an F5 right now, you'll see that the timeline is going to get bigger by however much I get selected. So here's an F5. That adds frames. Okay, so what takes frames away is when you hold the Shift key and do an F5, and whatever you have selected, that goes away. And this is going to go away again. So that's what I want. The animation is going to stop there at frame, what is that? Frame 101. And that works for me. Now I need to add a layer, so I'll add a plus here. This is going to be my key line. I'm going to select my rectangle tool. I'm going to get rid of the fill, no fill. Black is fine. That's good. I better save it before anything happens. I just did a Command S to save. Okay, so now I'm going to hold the Option key down with the rectangle tool selected. Option down. Remembers the dimensions that I set up last time. Hit OK. And then I'm going to select my selection tool, double click on my shape, and I'm going to put it 0 to 0. So 0 in X, tab to the next one, and 0 in Y. And that puts it into lines up the frame to the outside of the boundaries of the canvas. Now I need to go to my dock, and I go to the more settings, and I'm going to go to the center, both, hit OK. I'm going to do a save, Command S for save, and I'll run it and see what we've got. So it looks okay. The only thing I need now is my stop. So let's close this, come back over here, and on the top frame, I'm going to do insert another frame. I'm going to call this actions. I'm going to go to the very last frame, and click away and just click once there on that last frame. Give myself an F6 or right click and do an insert keyframe, which is this one in here, the one with the F6 next to it. Then I want to edit that, so I'll right click that and slide down to actions. And in here is where I type in the word this, and this is in reference to the canvas, and I want it to stop, open and close parentheses, semicolon. And that's it. So let's run this. And that's all that's going to do. So we're doing multiple layers in here. Now, I'm not requiring you to do any type of animation in particular, but what I do want you guys to do is to have the animation relate to the mark. And we did that with the rotation here, the horizontal and vertical animation here, and here we see this is made up of different sections, so we brought in the sections in three different animations. So there should be some relevant understanding of what the mark looks like in relationship to how it animates. If the mark is overly complicated and you can't figure out how you want to animate it, then the safest thing to do is to have it fade in. But otherwise, you can have it come from off screen, and you can also have combinations of animations. So we'll have an opportunity to talk about that during the crit, and if you guys want to go back and re-explore the animations, you can do that the following week. Okay, so that's the last one of the series. This is how you set up your animations. Of course, you're going to have two more sets. You still have to worry about the brush animations, 3 of those, as well as 25 marks, as well as the splicing, the typographic or the type splicing technique, 3 animations of those, and 25 splice animation images.